Marvel's Iron Man 219 hit store shelves and spinner racks in June of 1987. The same month, Beverly Hills Cop 2 was the #1 film, and Argentine footballer Lionel Messi was born. In the issue, Tony Stark makes a bid to buy the advanced technological firm Accutech. Just as he seals the deal, Tony comes face to face with the mysterious Ghost, who has the ability to phase through walls, be invisible, and get inside computers. The hunt is on as the Ghost promises to destroy Accutech and kill Tony Stark. The story continues in issue 220. The story was co-written by David Michelinie and Bob Layton. Michelinie had 2 successful runs on Iron Man with Bob Layton and was the first to introduce Stark's alcoholism into the storyline. He's also credited with creating Jim Rhodes, aka War Machine, as well as Venom, Carnage, and the Scott Lang Ant-Man. Michelinie left Marvel in 1981, but returned just a year before this issue, in 1986. He then proceeded to launch the Armor Wars storyline and created Ghost, who is introduced in this very issue. Michelinie left Iron Man again after issue 250, closing his second collaboration with a sequel to the Iron Man Doctor Doom time travel episode from issue 149 to 150. Bob Layton, who worked on the art for this issue as well as the cover, had been working on Iron Man since issue 215 just a few months earlier. He continued to work on Iron Man until issue 250. Layton would only work on 2 more issues of Iron Man before leaving Marvel altogether for Valiant Comics in 1991. Alongside Michelinie and Layton was letterer Janice Chiang. She worked on Iron Man starting in 1987 until 1990, and colorist Bob Sharen, who also worked on The Amazing Spider-Man, She-Hulk, Ghost Rider, and the West Coast Avengers, among others. Rounding out the team was editor Mark Gruenwald, who worked for Marvel his entire career. Gruenwald was promoted to full editorship by Marvel editor-in-chief Jim Shooter in 1982. His responsibilities included the Avengers, Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Spider-Woman, and What If. A few months after this issue, Gruenwald became Marvel's executive editor. Gruenwald was famous for a perfect recollection of even the most trivial details. Jim Shooter is credited as editor-in-chief when this issue was released. Shooter is a controversial figure in the history of Marvel. Hired at the tender age of 13 for DC in 1965, Mort Weisinger, DC's sole editor for Superman, commissioned Shooter to write Supergirl and Superman stories. Weisinger eventually offered Shooter a regular position on Legion of Superheroes. In 1976, Shooter joined the Marvel staff as assistant editor and writer, and by 1978 he was selected to be editor-in-chief. With Stan Lee relocated to Los Angeles to better oversee Marvel's animation, television, and film projects, Shooter was largely in charge of the creative decision-making at Marvel's New York City headquarters. By 1981, Shooter saw success with the disco-themed Dazzler #1, who was a mutant with ties to the X-Men. Shooter's strategy of selling the comic in specialty comic shops instead of newsstands and spinner racks proved successful, and the issue was a hit. Shooter was editor-in-chief during the second Spider-Man-Superman crossover event and saw great success with Marvel Fanfare, Kazar, and especially Secret Wars. His success, however, was not without sacrifice. He is known to have angered and alienated a number of longtime Marvel creators by insisting on strong editorial control and strict adherence to deadlines. There have been numerous stories about his conflicts with artists like Steve Gerber, Gene Colan, John Byrne, and Marv Wolfman. Sadly, Shooter's intolerance towards the gay community came through in Marvel publications, as John Byrne was forced to conceal North Star's sexuality under Shooter's tenure. In fact, the only gay reference in Shooter's time as editor was an issue of The Incredible Hulk, where 2 gay men attempt to have their way with Bruce Banner in the shower of a YMCA. This was written by Shooter himself. Comics historian Frederick Louis Aldama says that Marvel, under Shooter's tenure, was widely considered homophobic, and longtime Marvel editor John Romita was quoted as saying, "Shooter had been great for the first 2 or 3 years. He got the creative people treated with more respect. He got us sent to conventions, first class, with our ways paid, and we thought the world of him. Then his Secret Wars was a big hit, and after that he decided he knew everything and he started changing everybody's stuff." Shooter was fired from Marvel on April 15, 1987, 2 months before this issue was released. There's some interesting firsts in this issue. It was the first appearance of Abraham Zimmer, a lowly Accutech employee who was at first considered a liability when he was the first to spot the Ghost within the Accutech walls. In later adventures, Tony came to recognize Abraham as a trustworthy and valuable employee. He eventually helped Tony continue to function after a malicious biochip almost ended his life. Abraham also froze Tony's body into a cryogenic state when he appeared to be dead. This is also the first issue to feature the Ghost. Within Earth 616, Ghost was hired by Carrington Pax of the Roxxon Oil Corporation to destroy Accutech Research when they refused to sell vital research to Roxxon. The Ghost was hired to drive Accutech into bankruptcy. Initially a villain, the Ghost eventually turned anti-hero and joined the Thunderbolts. Hannah John Kamen portrays a female adaptation of Ghost named Ava Starr in the MCU film Ant-Man and the Wasp, and will reprise the role in the upcoming Thunderbolts movie. Iron Man is wearing the Silver Centurion armor in this issue. It is housed within a special briefcase that Tony carries around with him at all times. First introduced in Iron Man 200 from 1985, the Silver Centurion was initially intended for James Rhodes. However, once Tony used it in a fight against Obadiah Stane as Ironmonger, Stark kept the design for many months. It was used extensively against other armor users during the first Armor Wars until being destroyed with one of Firepower's powerful heat-seeking missiles. Rhodey shows an inclination for the Zagnut bar when looking for the cafeteria at Accutech, but is dismayed to only find Milky Way, which he dislikes, which is a curious choice as Milky Way is produced by Mars, an advertiser for this very issue. Tony is seen using both wireless headphones and a fitness tracker in 1987. Both items were about 30 years away from being invented and in regular use here in Earth 1218, also known as reality. I love Bob Layton's work on this issue. As usual, his attention to detail and unique framing open up each panel and gives us so much to look at within a confined space. The panel structure is fairly basic, as with most comics of this era, but we are seeing a few glimpses of what is to come on a few pages, with some panel breaks and lessening of framing to emphasize specific beats in the story. I like how Layton uses light blue outlines to highlight Ghost's intangibility, allowing us to see him, yet knowing he's using his tech in his suit to run through walls. By the way, the official name for this font is Magnetic Ink. It was developed in 1969 by James H. Moore. Layton appears to have drawn them in by hand. I found mint or near mint issues for sale on mycomicshop.com for $375, Key Collector Comics for $25, and there's a costly issue up for sale on eBay for $1,900. In 1987, there were roughly 789,000 comics published between a relatively few number of publishers in the market. The majority of these comics were Marvel, and the top title was X-Men. In fact, X-Men dominated sales of comics for 10 out of 12 months in 1987. The only outliers were the highly anticipated Publisher number 1, released in March, and The Amazing Spider-Man from June, which featured the marriage of Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson. Just the year prior, in 1986, Marvel's parent company, Marvel Entertainment Group, was sold to New World Entertainment, which within 3 years sold it to McAndrews and Forbes, owned by Revlon executive Ronald Perelman. For more on what Perelman did to the company, check out my previous video. In the newly minted modern age of comics, the ads are a diverse mix of old and new school. There are big brands mixed in with the classic muscle building and whoopee cushion ads. This was a time of change in the comic advertising industry. I see ads for M&Ms and Rainbow bubblegum, as well as Bonkers Chewy Candy alongside die-cast cars from MPC. 2 video cassette advertisements. The first is the animated series The Galaxy Rangers, and the other is a Josh Brolin 1986 film, Thrashing. The back cover features a very eye-catching ad for the Laser Tag Game Handbook. The handbook explains details about gaming ideas, game setup ideas, and even how to play as either individually or as a team. Interestingly, the ad was for the book only, not necessarily the actual laser tag equipment. I guess it was really big back then. I was just 8 years old, but I didn't play laser tag until I was much older. Maybe I was too sheltered as a youth. Ads from American comics, comic conventions, and a collection of stores called Marvel Supermarts are all present. It took me a while, but I did find a comic shop listed that is still open to this day. The Amazing Bookstore in Flint, Michigan. Check them out at 3718 Richfield Road in Flint, Michigan, or at amazebookstore.com. Thanks for checking out this video. If you want to see more, please hit like and subscribe. If you have suggestions for comics you want me to deep dive into, please leave a comment below. Please help and support real artists. AI is great for a lot of things, but not for creating art and replacing artists. Thank you.